There are 11 attractions at Kings Island that opened with the park in 1972, and one of those is Woodstock Express. Hello, everyone. Alongside Ryan Sir, I'm Don Helbig, and this is Tower Topics.
Tower Topics is a podcast by Kings Island fans for Kings Island fans. That's who we are, and that's who we care about. Don, a ride with so many names.
Yeah, it's undergone 4 different name changes as the children's area at Kings Island, the kids area, um, has kind of evolved over the years. So it's been renamed, rethemed multiple times since the park first opened, previously known as Scooby Doo from 1972 to 1979, then the Beastie 1980 to 2005, Fairly Odd Coaster 2006 to 2009, and in 2010 its present name, Woodstock Express.
Which name do you prefer?
I loved it when it was the Beastie because I
Yeah.
thought that was so cool for young kids. You know, they weren't tall enough to ride the Beast yet, but it was a big deal for them to ride the Beastie.
I think, and it's kind of a cute name too, at that.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
can't believe they ever changed it from that.
Had a great entrance, you know, the logo and everything there. I mean, it was really cool. Been painted a number of different colors. You know, it was yellow when it first opened. Now it's got kind of that North Carolina blue color to it. I think it looks good right now. I do like the name. You know, if you're going to have you know, the Peanuts themed kids area, I think Woodstock Express is a good name for it.
Yeah. It is a good name to match the theme. For those of you who are watching the video version, I just put a picture of it up with the current blue coloring. One thing I noticed is when it got painted that color, I was trying to take a picture of it. I had an SLR camera at the time. I think this was for Planet Snoopy's Media Day or whatever. And my camera had a ton of trouble focusing on the ride because it was so similarly colored to the sky.
Yeah.
So that's my memory of this. But I really wish they would go back to the Beastie thing with it. I mean, we're not talking about Universal Studios level theming, so I think straying from it wouldn't be the end of the world.
No, but like I said, it was a big deal for kids. I mean, you know, it was really fun when it was Scooby Doo, and some of these other names have been, you know, fun for kids. You know, they identify, you know, whether it was like the Fairly Odd Coaster, you know, at that time, that was a popular show, so kids would identify with that. But there was something about it, you know, for the kids that they were disappointed they couldn't ride the Beast yet. But if they rode the Beastie, you know, they were excited just because it felt like a big deal because of the name.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I want everyone to leave a comment on this video, on the YouTube video, telling us what's your favorite name that this ride has had. Is it the Fairly Odd Coaster? Is it the Scooby Doo, the Beastie, or the current name?
Woodstock Express.
Woodstock Express. Which one was your favorite? Name one of those 4, and I'll draw one person to win a 2024 pack of opening day cards that were given out at the park.
Yeah,
So leave a
folks, those
comment on-
cards, yeah, those cards are a nice collector's items. So, you know, definitely drop in which name you feel that you like the best. But, you know, another thing about this coaster opening with the park in 1972, they called it like a 30-day wonder because it only took 30 days to build. Designed by John Allen of the Philadelphia Toboggan Coasters, PTC. You might know his name associated with designing, building the Racer. It's based on the first 3 roller coasters that he designed shortly after becoming the company's president in 1954. And these coasters opened in 1956 at Hunts Pier, Angela Park, and Gooding Zoo, which is now the Columbus Zoo and Aquarium.
Yeah, so it's small but packs a punch. It's 38.6 feet tall with a drop of 30 feet, 1,350 feet long, and a top speed of 35 miles an hour. But it does kind of feel like you're racing out of control. It is a very fun ride for being a junior coaster.
It is a fun ride, and notable for me, it's the first roller coaster that I reached the 20 ride in one day mark on, and that was back in
Really?
1974. Yeah, that was a huge deal for me to ride that 20 times. At that time, Kings Island didn't have, you know, they had the Racer, you had the Bavarian Beetle, and you had the time the Scooby Doo coaster. But the first coaster that I hit that 20 ride plateau, and you know, I went home feeling really good about myself that I rode it 20 times in one day.
It doesn't take a lot for you to go home feeling good, does it, Don?
No, it doesn't.
So
Nothing will
anyway,
entertain me.
This design was modified from the original plans. It eliminated the curved loading station as well as opting instead for an inline station that precedes the curve and lift hill, also a little bit taller and a little bit longer. But they built two nearly identical models at King's Dominion and Carowinds. And in fact, fun fact, the one at King's Dominion actually opened before the park did.
It did. It did.
Yeah,
1974, and the park opened in 1975.
Yeah, that and their Lion Country Safari opened the year before the park did. So people could, I think, drive through at the time, Lion Country Safari, and then they could ride what was then the Scooby Doo there as a preview of the park, which is kind of cool because like the park is being built around you as you're going into this ride. Do you know, like, would you just drive up to the ride, or like how do they handle that?
I don't know how they handled that, because it was all about the safari at that time. So I don't know how that worked, but I can tell you I've been on all three.
Oh, good.
And they're each, like I said, nearly identical. They all ride differently and feel differently. So each one has kind of its unique personality, I think.
Yeah. So it originally opened with the park in 1972 as part of the Happy Land of Hanna-Barbera with the name Scooby Doo. And I always thought Scooby Doo was a weird name for it. And I guess it's because in my lifetime it's never been named Scooby Doo.
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, I was a big Scooby fan as a kid. I'm 9, 10, 11 years old, those first few years of Kings Island. And I really loved the name. So at first when they named it the Beastie, I was like, oh, man, they changed the name from Scooby-Doo, but I got it real quick, why that made a lot of sense and how big of a deal it was for young kids.
Yeah. So after the success of the Beast in 1979, the Scooby-Doo was renamed the Beastie in 1980. And that, to me, will always be the name of the ride. My favorite part of the Beastie was the graveyard that they kind of ripped off Haunted Mansion for, but they had names like Jim Shoe on the graves.
Yeah, and they had the tunnel on the,
Yeah.
they added that to the ride in 1980 to kind of replicate that tunnel on the Beast. So it was kind of a cool little element.
Yeah, 2006, it was renamed to Fairly Odd Coaster, which kind of does roll off the tongue. I do like that. It was inspired by the Nickelodeon TV show The Fairly Odd Parents, who
I
I've
thought
never
at
seen.
that time, though, the Nickelodeon shows were kind of changing. Some of them weren't on the air anymore. So I thought it was going to get to that point where a lot of, kids wouldn't have known who those characters were.
Mhm.
It wasn't going to take long to get to that point. So that was the perfect transition, I think, by 2010, when Cedar Fair, they had the rights to use that name until 2016 after acquiring the park in 2006. But all the Hanna-Barbera Nickelodeon themes were removed from the kids area to start the 2010 season, rethemed to the Peanuts characters. I do like its current name. So we're in our 14th year of it being known as Woodstock Express.
Mhm.
So I do like that name. I think it's kind of cute, adorable. It's fun.
It is. Yeah, it is a good name. I always had the same thought with Nickelodeon too. In the early years, it was kind of a weird mix because in the early years it was all about the gack, the slime, and stuff like that. And I thought that Nickelodeon Central did a great job of capitalizing on that. I thought what they did was absolutely brilliant. And then Nickelodeon kind of transitioned into like having more like live characters. You can't really have, I mean, I guess you could argue the princesses at Disney or whatever, but for the most part, you can't really have walk around characters that do that. So I remember they were kind of holding on to old themes, Fairly Odd Parents and what was the log flume? Wild Thornberries,
Wild Thornberries, right?
which was out of syndication in the United States when that ride opened, I believe.
Yeah. So that was one of
And
the, and that's when they first changed the name to the Peanuts characters. KI Central and the different fan sites, everybody's, oh, why would they do that? Nobody knows who the Peanuts kids are. They didn't know who the Nickelodeon characters were anymore either. So I never put too much concern, and they weren't going to identify with Peanuts. I think everybody sees the Thanksgiving and the Christmas special, so they were still more relevant than a lot of those Nickelodeon themed rides were at that point in time.
yeah, I agree. To me though, it didn't really matter because it was Hanna-Barbera when I was little, and I had no idea who those characters were. And to this day, I have no idea. But I always just associated with the park, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, but those are the characters I grew up with, watching them on TV, and it was they had the Enchanted Voyage ride, which,
Mm.
brought those characters, kind of to life for you when you would go through that experience, or you'd see Scooby out in the park, or Fred Flintstone, the Jetsons, so that was kind of a fun time for me, growing up and being younger and seeing them out in the park. But I like what they have there now with the Peanuts characters, because that's another, IP. I grew up with the Peanuts gang.
Yeah. So 2010, that's when we get our current name, and that's
Right.
Woodstock Express as the Peanuts worldwide characters. Now, I have to admit, I was definitely one of the ones on board with like Peanuts is irrelevant. I wasn't trying to ever argue that the Nickelodeon stuff was more relevant because it was definitely stale. But I thought we kind of like traded out one irrelevant thing for another. But as time's gone on, especially with like Winterfest, I've really come to appreciate the Peanuts characters, and it makes me kind of hope that they stick around even after the merger goes through.
And they're timeless. I think
Mm,
that was the beautiful thing about that, when Peanuts came on board at Kings Island, was just the timelessness of them. And I thought, that's going to work for years to come, because, like I said, there's always those Christmas specials, the Thanksgiving special, and just some of the other things that you see with the Peanuts characters. And they're really, having a little bit of um, a renaissance there, because they've got some of those other things that are out there now on some of the streaming in that.
Oh yeah, like Apple has the rights to the Peanuts characters, and they're coming up with new material. They
Right.
they had I don't know if you've seen this yet, but the Franklin origin story is out now when Franklin moves to town, and
Hmm.
it talks about how he had trouble making friends because they'd always moved around because his father was in the military and stuff. It's good stuff. Um, so I think that I don't think I was wrong in 2010 when this came around. I think I was absolutely right. The difference is it resurged. And there's that Peanuts movie, which I don't know how well it did. I imagine it didn't do that well because they probably would have pumped out a sequel already. But
Yeah.
the Peanuts movie is hilarious.
Yeah.
It's legit funny.
I had seen the Peanuts characters at Knott's Berry Farm. I'd seen them at Cedar Points, and I was able to observe how the guest interacted with them.
Mhm.
And so by the time it was coming to Kings Island, I thought it would be a nice transition, that there wasn't going to be any "who are these guys," just because I'd seen it at the other parks, and how the guest embraced them.
Yeah. I mean, there are I feel like there's a lot of gaps in the Peanuts characters. Like I really like Snoopy. Snoopy is the most accurate representation of a beagle I've ever seen. But like Charlie Brown is kind of depressing. Lucy is horribly mean. You never have like a character you can relate to. But with that being said, there's so many dynamics and stuff.
The thing about Charlie Brown, though, is I think he's so relatable. So that's what I like about Charlie Brown. If I had to pick a favorite Peanuts character, it's going to be Charlie Brown, just
Oh
because, like
no
I said,
way.
just
Charlie Brown is like that's the least bad. Okay,
just
it
relatable.
goes
That's what I mean. He
Snoop.
identifies with so many people.
It goes Snoopy, Schroeder, Franklin. That's the top three.
Well, it might be the top three, but my favorite is going to be Charlie Brown, just
Top
because,
Charlie Brown's not even a top three.
for you,
Snoopy, Schroeder, Franklin. Top three.
Franklin's number
As
two.
voted on by the American people.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. let's move on to the listener question.
All right,
Go ahead, read it.
Elijah Magabi. He says, any Kings Island legend, alive or not, if they were to serve as general manager of KI, Kings Island, who do you think would do the best job? So we've got anybody that's a Kings Island legend that can be alive or not. So if they were to serve as general manager of Kings Island, who do you think would do the best job? I think this is a great question.
It is. And I guess we get to determine if these people are Kings Island legends. And I think the name that comes to mind is the one that you're thinking of, and that's Jeffrey Siebert.
Jeffrey Siebert, yes, he is definitely a Kings Island legend. Currently the president of Six Flags Fiesta Texas, so I think he would do a terrific job. I'm going to throw out a name that not a legend, but someone I think would have done a great job as a general manager, is Matt Schaefer. He was the former
Okay.
VP of marketing, still involved with Cedar Fair on the corporate side. What I liked about Matt is outside the box kind of thinker. Willing to
Risk
try things.
taker.
Yeah, if it wasn't for Matt and being that risk taker, you don't see Robbie Knievel doing his motorcycle jump in 2008. You don't see Rick Walenda doing his skywalk. You don't see Nick Walenda coming back the next year to beat, Rick's mark. You don't see some of these other things that
You don't see
the
Joey
park.
Chestnut eating.
Yeah, the hot. I mean, he was a risk taker. He knew how to come up with things that, as a PR person, I liked the things he was doing because it gave me a chance to make a lot of noise. The other thing about Matt is, you would have been you you weren't going to be somebody that could fool Matt. He would see through you if you tried to make excuses and things for why something wasn't working or wasn't going to work. Matt would see through that kind of stuff. But he's a guy like maybe not a lot of guests know who he is, but I think he would have been a terrific general manager had he either been given that opportunity or wanted to choose that path.
I think that had he not moved over to the corporate side, he'd be the GM right now. I think that would have been his next step. But I think he's I'm not entirely certain, but I think he's laterally on the same level as a GM as far as pay and prestige and whatever. But I don't think it would be our position to kind of like list off kind of, aside from what you mentioned, the programs that he kind of spearheaded, but a lot of the stuff that he took a risk on was pretty revolutionary,
Exactly.
So yeah, absolutely.
Dinosaurs Alive. That was something he pushed for, so not only at Kings Island, but because of the success that it had at Kings Island, other Cedar Fairs, parks got Dinosaurs Alive. So you like somebody like that that's going to be a risk taker. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a great question, hypothetical if, we had to come up with somebody, but those two names, Jeffrey Siebert, Matt Schaefer. So yeah.
Okay, I should probably explain who Jeffrey Siebert is in case he doesn't know. So Jeffrey Siebert is currently the president of Six Flags Fiesta Texas. He's been a guest on our other podcast, the Attractions Group podcast, and he was the PR guy in the late Paramount years. He left to go to Schlitterbahn to be their corporate PR less than a year before Cedar Fair took over, and that's when Maureen came in. But Jeffrey went from he was what they called the marketing communications manager. That's a title he preferred, but he went from Kings Island to overseeing. I mean, Schlitterbahn has always been kind of a smaller company, so he oversaw communications for like their 3 parks or so. Moved over to Six Flags to be marketing director, then got promoted to park president of Six Flags Fiesta Texas. And unless you have your head in a hole in the ground, you have seen the things that he's done over there, which have been absolutely incredible. Not necessarily with adding new rides and stuff, although he has, but revamping old ones and repackaging and remarketing stuff. Just absolutely brilliant and good guy all around. Good
master motivator too with the staff.
Absolutely. Okay, cool. Hey, I'm Ryan Sir along with Don Helbig, and this is Tower Topics.